him can hold him up a little bit, it'll give me an opportunity to find the spot, and whoa. Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to look at the Alt F4 Thursday night league that I race at Bathurst. If you're interested in an F4 weekly league race, you can check us out at SundayNightSkippy.com, which will forward you to our Discord. You run a 10-minute sprint race and a 40-minute feature race that does include one pit stop for fuel. So a little context this week. I came into this with very minimal practice, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 or 12 laps the night before. I've been so focused this week on preparing for the 24-hour race at Daytona and the F3 car at Coda, which is another track I don't know super well. So I came in with minimal practice. I do qualify, and yeah, just enjoyed this race. I think it was actually super interesting. One other thing to note, we do have Oriole of IndyCar, former IndyCar driver. I think he ran the Indy 500 about 12 times or something like that, which is pretty amazing. He's in our race. Super cool to race against, like a legit IndyCar legend. One other thing you'll notice, and you might say to yourself, hey Chris, dummy, why are you hitting the rev limiter all the time as you go down this giant mountain? Well, unfortunately I used a setup that was not, I guess, properly geared. So, unfortunately for me, as I go down the back of this mountain, especially with draft, you'll see that I have a serious challenge putting any overtakes on anyone because I was banging the rev limiter so hard. So, anyway, that is what it is. Lastly, appreciate the views, appreciate the likes, and the comments. It truly does mean everything. I love to hear from you guys, so keep providing feedback. Let me know what I'm doing right. Let me know what I'm doing wrong. And yeah, keep that coming. So with that, enjoy. Right, so it looks like we're getting settled in here for the heat race. This is a 10-minute, I like to refer to it as a sprint race, but it's a 10-minute sprint. Nice getaway. Got the IndyCar legend directly in front of us. Two guys behind make a little bit of contact there, Perez and Law. Thankfully, neither of those guys ended their sprint race in the first corner there. Nice to see everybody get nice and single file and kind of stretched out right out the gate, right after turn 1 as we start to go up the mountain. That's not something you'll see in the feature race. Spoiler alert, it gets a little bit more spicy. But thankfully, heat race, everybody's single file and kind of hanging out at this point. We talked about the theme of this race being survival, and that's really true for multiple reasons. I mean, one, you're on the mountain. It's very technical, very tricky. There are walls, you know, all over the place. In many cases, as we'll see here and there, inches away from ending a race, especially in these open wheel cars. I don't believe that anybody who designed this racetrack thought it would be a great idea to send formula cars up and down it, but you know, we're here for it, so I just don't think these walls are conducive to the suspensions of an open wheel vehicle. But all good. One other thing you'll notice throughout the heat and the feature race, Forrest Gump's elbow there is just not a corner I ever figured out. And yes, I do know it's not called Forrest Gump's elbow, but that just seemed to be the theme of the week for a lot of the guys that I race with. I just could not figure that corner out to save my life. Finally, after the race was over, JR told me I should have been going through there in 3rd gear, which I should have asked prior to the race. But yeah, just never figured it out, and that with the combination of hitting the rev limiter, going down the mountain every time, I was not very effective in making any overtakes. The very back half of this lap, or back fourth of this lap, or whatever it is. So glad we got through the first lap, no incidents. With it being a league race, generally everybody's going to be pretty clean and pretty chill anyway, so I don't think there was a lot of crazy action going on in the first lap, but certainly nothing near me. So really just settling in, you know, the first lap's a little over 2 minutes long. With these cars, you need about 2 laps on an average track to kind of really get the heat going and feeling good about downforce and stickiness and all that stuff, so maybe not quite there yet, but definitely definitely close. So sitting P12, you know, again, as you mentioned in the intro, coming into this race with minimal practice. I did want to qualify because I didn't want to find myself in the very back of the pack. That would be, I think, a big challenge to try to make a lot of overtakes. So thankfully I was able to start 12th and at least just get my footing in the heat race, sprint race. It's called a sprint race. So that's really the goal in this heat race. Instantly, the sprint race, really thinking about getting my feet under me, putting some laps in, trying to break some of the barriers of the practice laps that I had done, where I was maxing out at like started in like the 210s, 211s, really 211s, 212s, and got down to like a 209, I think, by the end of like my 12 laps or something. Just kind of figuring it out, but knew that once I came into the race and started going through the sprint race, that I would have an opportunity to kind of race in anger, race with guys, and just kind of get a feel for what line I should be running, where my braking mark should be, and that really is what we're going through here in the sprint race. Got a little hard on the brakes right there. Definitely remember having a slightly Code Brown moment. Really didn't want to run into the back of Chris and end our sprint races, but just that did not happen. Again, trying to find these braking marks. I think in a lot of cases I was braking a little too early, and as you'll see, especially throughout the feature race, tend to rein that in and find better braking marks. But early on, it's just, again, it's survival, it's learning, it's kind of all of that wrapped into a 10-minute race. So our fast trio, there's probably a couple others to include in it, but the main guys of, you know, Decker, Leo, and Chaz, like they're out there rolling ahead. It's kind of this next pack. We're getting on with it. I was really lucky to see Chris get a little loose there early, and thankfully I was able to do that and stick to the inside. Normally the car would just naturally kind of flow towards the wall there, and I got lucky to see that early enough and not be carrying too much speed, and was able to kind of make the adjustment as to not get caught up in that wreck. So definitely got lucky on that. Again, survival. It's truly the name of the game around this place. And the mountain, I mean, it's funny. You know, most races you're racing the track, but really the people around you. This race is just unique. You are racing the mountain, and the other people are almost secondary. So with the spin in front, currently sitting P10. You know, again, I would be thrilled to finish P10. Have had 10 minutes of experience, and just having 10 minutes of feel for the car. You can kind of tell I turned off the overlay above, saw that we had about 4 minutes to go in the race, and really at this point everything that's in that overlay is pretty much irrelevant. My race is directly in front and behind me. Brian's doing a really good job staying on my gearbox. I'm trying not to look up too much. Part of me definitely thought, let's just turn the mirror off, and if he sends it, he sends it. Knowing it's a league race, knowing these guys, like, I don't expect a bad move, right? So I feel like a lot of cases I need the mirror in the pubs, especially because I'm expecting a bad move, and I need to be able to see it in advance to be able to react to it. And this Alt F4, you're not expecting those moves. Maybe expecting is not even the right word, but it's just not the move somebody's going to make on you. They're not going to just slam it in there when you're not, when they shouldn't be. So I should be able to anticipate, like, yeah, if I ran wide, or, you know, if I made a mistake, or it's a specific part of the track where it's a good overtaking opportunity, like, okay, it might be there, but he's not going to just go flying in there when he shouldn't. But I didn't turn the mirror off, kept it going, and I think really just started putting my focus forward. We've got Oriel and Pim directly in front of us. I know Pim's going to make a move. He's not one to shy away from an opportunity, you know, a good racing opportunity. So if he finds an opening here with Oriel, I think he'll definitely make a move for it. And part of me was thinking, I want to also be opportunistic and make that move myself if the opportunity presents itself. But at the same time, again, I'm not going to put ourselves in a negative situation. And if Pim does have an opportunity, I'd love to be able to capitalize on it. And see if we can get a twofer on Oral as we go back up the mountain. So it's like Nicholas ahead of us must have had something happen. He's super quick. The fact that he's only 1.7 seconds ahead of me at this point, I'm guessing that smoke was him. I don't actually recall if it was or was not. The fact that he's as close to us as he is, I'm gonna guess it was him. Oh man, yeah, that's right. He does have that spin there. Unfortunately, I think that was kind of the theme for Nicholas's race. There were a couple instances where I think he just lost the car or made a couple little mistakes. You'll see that in the feature race. He and I are pretty close to each other in the feature race, and he'll start to close that gap a little bit, and then the gap opens up a little bit, or I think he just makes a mistake or two and along the way. But yeah, another one of those guys is just super quick in our league and always at the top of the field. So we're starting the last lap of the sprint race, which has been a good one. Learning a lot. Pim has a nice run here in Oriole. You can see that he's looking inside, has the move done. Oriole does the right thing there, gives up the space. I think, thankfully for me, I was able to capitalize and follow Pim right on through. And in this moment, I feel like I have a nice run, you know, making progress, kind of catching Pim up. Only 3/10 behind at the moment. The key is really being able to catch him in the right spot. So as we're kind of coming up and cresting the top of the mountain here, definitely making progress, closing into 2/10. And fortunately, I just carry so much momentum that I catch him at like the worst possible mark. I caught him right as we got to the top of the mountain. And I was not going to make a move there. I think that's a little dangerous. For me, I'm not at all comfortable at the top of the mountain. That transition, as you start to go down, I'm not comfortable with it whatsoever. So I wasn't going to try to make a move there. So I had to back out a little bit and lost a ton of momentum. And as you see, Forrest Gump's elbow caught me out again. That time I did some seesawing at the wheel there to just keep it out of the walls. So I think those two instances, the combination of the set I'm running, which is just the fixed set, tops out so quickly in 6th gear going down the mountain, I wasn't going to have enough to even make much of an opportunity to overtake Pim here. So yeah, that's how the sprint race is going to end. I'm going to cross the line P8, which, you know, starting 12th, finishing 8th. I'll take that every day of the week. Alright, so as we start to grid up here for the feature race, one thing to remember is this is a 40-minute race. Our Alt F4 league does a really good job of giving us a 10-minute sprint race where you really do feel like it is a sprint. The 40-minute race could not be more different. There's a forced pit stop because we're limited to fuel. In the 40-minute race, the mentality is just very different. It's a long race. So we're going to start off here, get a pretty good getaway. Really just trying to settle in. Again, started with minimal practice time, had a good 10-minute sprint. I think we kind of got our feet under us. Unfortunately / unfortunately, I'm going to have a nice little run on Pim here as we go into turn 2. Now, my mentality at this point of a race, especially of a 40-minute race, I'm not actually looking to pass Pim here. My mentality is I just want to maintain the momentum that I have so that I don't get overtaken by somebody else. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because Aaron takes the opportunity to get an overtake done going into turn 2. Just kind of found myself in a situation where I wasn't really trying to push the envelope, and I don't want to let off too much to lose the momentum to the people behind me. So kind of didn't work out, but not so bad. I'll take one lost position and then settle in as we try to get up this mountain. I feel like every time I go across the top of that mountain, it gets sketchier every time. My telemetry inputs just look a little crazy. And again, as we go through Forrest Gump's elbows, we'll continue to refer to it. Never comfortable. Really never comfortable. I think I had put in some pretty good laps, both in the heat and the feature. But just, if I could have I think felt more comfortable at those two moments of the circuit, I would have had significantly better times and maybe had more opportunities to have an overtake as we go down the side of the mountain here. It's a tight little bunch of 4 guys, all racing pretty hard. Fortunately, Oriole gets a little out of shape there. He does the gentlemanly thing to do, and he goes off track. Could have very easily just swung that thing, but stayed off. This situation had me not feeling great. I don't want to be 3 wide, but again, as we come through with a lot of momentum out of the final corner, it was either let out and almost certainly lose to Aaron and Nicholas behind me, or push it down the inside and at least try to maintain the momentum that I had coming out of the final corner. So definitely went down there. Not a whole lot there to be gained. Me and John were racing pretty tight, pretty clean, but because of the way that went down, it really put me on the back foot. So not only did we lose space to JR, and then John still maintained in front, we lost the space to Aaron. He was definitely opportunistic and took that opportunity there to get the overtake done. So that's kind of what's going through my mind in that moment. Again, I really wasn't looking to pass, but so much. It was more in terms of just not losing momentum, because the 2 guys in front of me going through the final corner were side by side. Naturally, they're going to lose momentum to the people behind them if they're on a normal racing line at normal pace and all that. So just kind of a situation you find yourself in. You just, sometimes neither one of the options are going to feel great, and you just have to kind of choose in the moment whichever one feels the least bad. So was what it was. The reality was, if I had let out as opposed to going 3 wide with those guys, I probably would have lost to both Aaron and Nicholas, which I think is inevitable. Nicholas is faster than me anyway, on pure pace, so that's going to happen. Obviously it's happening right now here, but I think even prior in the 3 wide situation it would have happened as well. So I think I did the right thing there, and he had the position, he had the momentum. I let out early, gave him the spot, and just moving on with life. Again, settling in. We're only a couple minutes into a 40-minute race. We have a very long way to go, so just trying to put some laps in, continue to get my feet under me, and just make progress. Unfortunately, Tom, I don't know whether I helped him induce that spin or not. I hope I didn't, but Tom definitely seemed to maybe brake a little too hard or a little too late in that situation, or maybe I broke a little too early and he wasn't expecting it. I'm not really sure, but unfortunately there for Tom, he got out of shape and spun himself out, but I don't believe he hit the wall, so thankfully he's able to move forward. Kind of as we look ahead, you can see John and Aaron going side by side into turn 2. Never really a great idea. I mean, it's so easy to look at it in hindsight, look at it after the fact and say, I should have let out and just let that person have the spot, fall in behind them, and move forward. But in the moment when you're racing, you really don't want to give up anything. So it's tough to be disciplined and kind of let the person who has the momentum, who's got the position, just take it. But it happens to me all the time, that's for sure. Both sides. Love cresting that mountain. It's always terrifying. If you've never done the Bathurst 12-hour special event that iRacing puts on, I would highly recommend it. I've done it, I think the last 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. It's just a great time. 12 hours around this beast in a GT3 car is something I think everybody who loves racing, loves sim racing, should definitely experience at least once. So looks like John's got a nice run here on Nicholas. Looks like they're going to race it all the way down here, see who wins out. Yep, so it looks like, yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works, Nicholas didn't give it up, had position, And they kind of both went into that corner, and John maybe had to brake a little late, being off the optimal line. Really lost him a decent amount of time, unfortunately. But I was able to get past there. See if we can stay in the draft here of Nicholas and just have him pull us around for a little while. This point of the race, I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that I just put in basically 208 flat laps. I was kind of hoping that I was going to be able to hold on to the draft of Nicholas ahead of me, but he and Aaron have done a pretty good job building some space. John, who's also super quick in our league, he was able to stay in my slipstream for quite a while and make a good move there as we start going up the mountain. So not unexpected. Kind of a situation where, again, we're surviving. We are trying to make it towards the end of this race. Every position is certainly super important, but at the same time, if you don't finish, it doesn't really matter. So definitely have that mentality throughout this entire race. Not going to fight super hard over really any of these positions. Certainly not until we get towards the very end. And I kind of know in a lot of respects who I am and who I'm not racing, at least on pace. So again, just going to stay in the slipstream, try to make as much progress as possible. And as we're about 10 minutes, a little bit more, I think, into this race, my mind starts shifting a little bit towards the pit stop. So typically the way I do a pit stop is I'm going to run it pretty much until I absolutely have to pit. Sometimes I'll do it with maybe a lap left, just in the situation of, especially a long lap like this where it's more than 2 minutes long. I just don't want to find myself in a situation where I can't get all the way around. So, fortunately, John had a tough final corner there. Ended up kind of going off. I don't think he actually hit the wall. If he did, I don't think it was much, because I'm pretty sure he comes back at some point in this race. But yeah, fortunately for him, that kind of happened. Thankfully, again, I saw it quick. I think I've been getting a lot better at just recognizing either when things are going to happen or when things do happen that are completely unexpected. It almost just doesn't seem to faze me as much anymore. I just run my line, and if the person happens to be in said line, maybe we'll make contact. Maybe I can make a twitch move real quick to avoid that. But in a lot of cases, just seem to be getting better with that spatial awareness to just run my line, do my thing, and not really be as impacted by other people as maybe I was in the past. So you can see that Aaron and Nicholas both, quick. Pim as well. They've caught Pim, so that has my attention for sure. If Pim can hold him up a little bit, it'll give me an opportunity to find the spot. And whoa, that, and even watching that back, when that happened in the moment, I don't know. I didn't react, as much as you might expect, given what we were just talking about. But it definitely, as you can see, I completely blow Forrest Gump's elbow there. It kind of had me. That was definitely a Code Brown situation. I did not expect that to happen whatsoever. Unfortunate for Pim for sure. I was hoping he was going to hold those guys up for me. But yeah, he had a bad transition, I think, there at the top of the mountain. Ended up in the wall. Thankfully, was able to literally scoot by him with inches to go and not get collected. So did lose a spot to Jack in the process as we completely butchered that corner there in the transition towards the backstretch here of the track. But at this point, just thankful to be alive. So make a couple little mistakes there. That was certainly a mistake in the final corner, and then a big one there in the elbow. So taking a deep breath, really just thankful to still be in this race. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 minutes or so to go. There we go, 26 minutes, and again, just settling in, taking a look at our relatives. We've got a good 4-second gap to Oriole. Jack is quick. Don't really anticipate catching him, but hoping to stay in his draft as much as possible to keep pulling me along and really just keeping the eye on the prize, thinking about the pit stop, thinking about when to do that, how to do that efficiently, and then get back out on the track and finish this race. this point of the race, I'm definitely keeping an eye on the relatives, trying to get a sense of who I may or really may not be racing by the end of this race. Not sure exactly what happened to Jack earlier on in the race. He's pretty quick. Just kind of looking at his fastest lap, right? He's going to be 3 to 7 tenths faster than some of the guys around us. So I don't really think, I'm looking at this and just thinking he's probably not somebody I'm going to be racing. He's probably going to, you know, keep on moving up. But I see Aaron and JR, and those two guys I think are more on my pace, and those two guys I would expect to be racing a little bit more often. So I'm kind of looking at where they are, what's their relative, am I going to be able to make any time up on those guys? I wouldn't expect to. You know, maybe Aaron here, as these two guys are racing, I'll have an opportunity to catch that gap. But JR being 4 seconds ahead, I mean, you know, it's not like I'm going to be knocking off half a second or something a lap on him. We're going to be running pretty much the same time, so you know, that's going to be a pit strategy situation / maybe he gets caught up in something, a couple big mistakes, you know, whatever it is. Give me an opportunity there. Nicholas behind again, and Jason, frankly, those two guys are on the faster side of things. I wouldn't typically expect to be racing them either on pure pace. But again, they have a pretty good gap to them, so I'm hoping that if I can just run my laps, even if I'm shredding a couple tenths a lap, hoping that there's enough where I can just maintain, at least stay in front of them as best I can. But as far as overtaking opportunities, I'm thinking Aaron, and then, you know, stretch goal, you know, I would say JR, if he can make a couple mistakes and I can stay in the slipstream and play the smart game and just kind of see how it plays out. You can see there I was trying to make make something happen, just make a different line going into that corner, to do anything I could to try to find a better route out, try to make up some time, get a draft, anything. And just, fortunately, I was a little too close to that wall. I almost touched it. Definitely catching Aaron up here, given the slipstream, but using that setup, the baseline setup that I was using for this track, I think really hamstrung me as far as having an opportunity to make these overtakes. And as Aaron and I get that close, of course, that's the time he decides to pit. So, I mean, you know, obviously it was kind of inconsequential, but it was like, man, I've finally caught up to somebody that I had an opportunity to overtake, and he's in the pits. So first thing I do as soon as that happens is look down and say, okay, remember, me and Aaron were basically together on the track when he went in. Let's see what happens, you know, when I come out. Where do we end up? So we're kind of in the middle of that pit strategy game. I'm looking up, looking at how many laps I have left until I have to pit, and trying to figure out where, you know, where do I want to pit. And so my thought process is running through that right now, just trying to get a sense of the, you know, the lay of the land. We're about 20 minutes into the race, 20 minutes to go. You know, where am I on the track in terms of position? I'm loving where I'm sitting right now at P7. Maybe an effective P8, if you will, because I did not get that overtake done. But who's around me? What are the relatives? What are the gaps? And just kind of get a sense of, once the pit stop cycle through, did I make progress? Did I lose out? And just kind of keep that in mind to use that for future races, trying to make some adjustments. But that transition across the top of the mountain was not especially comfortable whatsoever. But yeah, one thing I'm looking at as we kind of watch this race back and talk through it, one thing that makes me really happy is to look at those consistent lap times. I was, you know, generally running low 208s, had a pretty rough one there in mid 209, but jumped right down into the 207s, 207.3, 207.6, 207.3. Like that for me is great. I know there's draft in there, and that certainly changes things, but just to be down in that space definitely makes me feel pretty good about the progress being made throughout the course of this race. So we see we definitely gained a lot of time to JR. Jack made an overtake there, got that done. Not sure if something happened to JR, if there was a mistake made or not, but that's a good 2 seconds. We caught, you know, with just a couple laps on JR. So again, remember, we were just talking about getting the lay of the land as to who's around us, who do we expect to be able to race based on pace. to see JR now within only 2.5 seconds, that feels great. And still have a pretty decent gap to guys like Nicholas with about 5 seconds behind at this point. So feeling really good about where we sit in this race. Top 10 definitely feels attainable. Maybe like a P5, P6 situation is an opportunity for us. Again, this race is attrition. This race is literally about survival. It's important to overtake cars, of course, but at this specific track, a lot of the cars will take themselves out. You just stay on the track, keep it clean, keep some relatively solid and consistent times, you're going to do just fine. So that's my mentality throughout this entire race. Really, it's my mentality all the time, but especially here. Now having Leo on his outlap, who's extraordinarily fast, directly behind JR, I'm just hoping that he's going to catch him at a bad time, and JR's going to lose a little bit of time as a result, and give me an opportunity to close that gap where maybe on pure pace alone I'm not able to do it. So hoping for that, but also remembering we've got pit stops coming up just here in a second. So unfortunately for me, Leo catches JR at a really good time, makes a proper overtake, but still 2 seconds, I'll take that. Looking up, getting a sense of the pit stop requirement here, and seeing things go red on the far left of the screen, which means, hey, it's time. Come on in. Probably could have pushed it another lap. I think it had like a lap and a half left, but I think it's time to go ahead and just get that done. And I think JR is on the same wavelength, so he and I go in there together. I actually do close up really good to him as we do the pit entrance here. It was 2 seconds. I got it down to 0.4 as we get in the pits. So that actually is a really useful tool. If you can get in and out of the pits quickly, you can close up quite a bit of time just by being very efficient getting in and out of the pits. Massive thing to think about in this moment is do not overshoot the pit stop. I think I was actually a little too cautious getting into the pit, but do not overshoot. Thankfully I did not, and man, JR got a phenomenal exit in the pit, so he opened that thing back up to about 1.8 seconds, whereas we came in together it was about 0.4. Kind of see me shaking my head a little bit there. I was like, damn, I was really hoping that JR and I were going to be a little closer on pit exit, but he did a great job there. I want to say he might have taken just ever so slightly less fuel than I did in that situation too. Certainly don't know that for a fact, but it felt like he got out really quick, just out of the actual pit stall itself. So I think he must have taken just a little bit less fuel, and that's certainly going to help a little bit too, so long as he finishes the race. Let's see. So remember when we were trying to get a sense before the pit stops started to cycle, Aaron Law was somebody we were looking at, trying to get a sense of where he might be. He's not all my relative, so I was looking at that as we were leaving the pits, trying to get a feel like, did I beat him out? Did I beat him in the pit sequence scene and all that sort of thing? But I think he must have had some kind of big issue, and I don't know whether it was speeding in the pits or what it was, but he was actually in the pits when we go back around, and so he must have had something go down that took him out of the race, basically. So once we cycle through, I believe we're going to be P8, because I believe somebody has not pit yet. Let's see it once we go back across. Currently P7, but basically everybody's going to be cycling through here. And then once this lap kind of goes all the way through, maybe one more, we'll have a pretty good sense of like what do we need to accomplish, like what is the race at this point. Alright, so we're sitting P8. We've got JR 1.8 ahead of us, about 2 seconds ahead of us really. Nicholas is on his outlap. He's about 2.7. Jason's about 7 seconds. This is kind of our race. There's 13 minutes left to go. And as I look up and start hitting the grass in the process, this part of the race I probably should have turned that off, should have turned off the rear view, as we've done in the past, and just focus forward. A couple reasons why I actually don't do that. So I'll keep the overlay on, mostly because I wasn't 100%. This track is so large, you're just never really sure with fuel. I just didn't want to run into a situation where I could have known earlier that maybe I wasn't going to make it on fuel, and that I could have potentially done something about it. So I left that on, and then the reason I didn't remove the mirror is because Nicholas was behind me. If it was somebody that I felt like I was maybe more on pace with, so say it was like Aaron or somebody that was running laps my speed, I probably would have turned it off, because I would have been less concerned of maybe them catching me on pure pace alone versus me making a stupid mistake or whatever. So I left it on just in case he did catch me on pure pace. I could see it and react to it. So that's why I didn't do that in this moment. But again, with about 12 minutes to go at this point, our race is settled. We're sitting P8, great place to finish. Be very happy with that. With JR about 2.5 seconds ahead, Nicholas shy of 3 seconds behind. This is the race, so settle in. Survival's still the thing, but we're kind of pushing a little bit more at this point. Like, feet are under us, understand what's going on, understand how to get around the track about as good as I'm going to, at least. And really just trying to say, okay, let's attack. Let's see if we can put the pressure on JR, see if he can feel that a little bit. Maybe he's looking up in the mirror a touch. Can we put some pressure on him? Maybe make a couple mistakes so we can close that gap. And then just trying to do everything possible to not do that for Nicholas behind us. So at this point of the race, that's really what's going on, and just settling in and trying to get it knocked out. So we just got the notice that we're P6, so benefiting from a little bit of attrition from other folks, gaining some positions. Never the way you want to do it, but at the end of the day, that's part of the race, right? You got to finish. Sometimes collected in other people's things, sometimes make mistakes on your own. Certainly been part of both, certainly created both. And yeah, so still heads down, focused on JR in front. So make a massive mistake there. And we're 1.7, you can see me shake my head a little bit. We're going to lose a couple tenths to JR and give a couple tenths to Nicholas there. But again, really just trying to keep heads down, trying to focus forward. Got our lap times back down to a pretty good spot after the in lap and the out lap, back down to a 2:08.1 and then down to a 2:07.5. So you definitely see that I'm pushing it as much as I'm comfortable with at this point of the race. Trying to put the pressure on JR. 2 seconds is kind of a tough gap to feel like you're putting pressure on someone, especially as you go through the mountain. You can kind of see, like, he doesn't even see me for most of it. So if he's looking at his mirror at all, he's not seeing me a whole lot, except for places like this where it's not, overly stress-inducing. If you see somebody in your mirror as you go through the mountain, it's a little bit different of an experience for sure. But yeah, trying to put pressure on him, see if I can crack him at all, and pushing the car as hard as I can without putting myself in a situation to take myself out of the race. So heads down, focus, trying to catch JR and trying not to make any silly mistakes for Nicholas. See if we can finish top 5. So as we come around to start the final lap, you can see that the gap with JR, he's increased it a little bit. I made a couple minor mistakes to really not do myself any favors there, but definitely made enough mistakes, as I shake my head there, to give Nicholas a pretty good run and opportunity. Really, in this final lap, plan was to go in and really not make any silly mistakes, to just knock off 3 or 4 tenths, which is exactly what I did in turn 1, unfortunately, in the final lap. So really I'm telling myself, even out loud, like, settle down, focus forward, hit your marks, finish this lap. He's not going to get 1.5 seconds on the final lap unless you do something incredibly stupid. Unfortunately, I did something a little bit stupid in turn 1. Really just want to finish the rest of this lap without doing anything as similar to that, not take any chances. JR is too far forward. Just focus on finishing 6th, which would be a phenomenal result given, you know, my practice, my preparation for this race, and just my raw pace in general. So P6 is a great finish with this group of people any day of the week. So certainly be happy to take that. As you can look at my lap times, I've been running some solid times down in the 207s, low 208s. So certainly happy with those, especially as the track temperature, you know, begins to increase lap by lap. It looks like as we kind of come down and come through the other side of the mountain here, JR is going to finish 5th. I'm going to do my best here to finish 6th, not make any stupid mistakes. It's really got 2 main corners to go. Took it a little easy going into that one. As you can see, just trying to keep it smooth. Give up a 10th or so is totally fine. Got plenty to give. And if I can just not do anything dumb here, as I do not, thankfully, no spoilers. Come across the finish line and finish 6th. And wow, I forgot that I did that. That was me stretching my neck, and I totally apologize for that's a little jarring on a 2-dimensional space. But yeah, P6. Take that all day. You're fighting the, you know, the guys around you, but more than anything, you're fighting the mountain. So Nicholas comes up here, little rev. Good job, good race, and yeah, man, that's how we do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll be back next week at Barcelona.